Here's an interesting comparison with something that goes on in our own society. Here's an interesting similarity. In the Jewish ceremony for preparation of the dead body, called a Havarikadisha, the body is washed, as is done with this one, so it is clean. On the argument, as the same is made here, when the body goes to God, it must be clean. And you can be sure there's no embalming, and there's no fluids other than natural ones in the body. And then it is wrapped in flax. Why is it wrapped in flax? Because that expresses simplicity. And you present yourself to God just as you are, with simplicity, not pumped full of formaldehyde. You don't want to be trailing up to St. Peter at the Golden Gate, reeking of formaldehyde. So if you're Jewish, that won't happen. The other place that is happening, a movement in American culture which is fairly recent, comes from England, called green burials. And we have 2 green cemeteries in the state, one up by Blaine and one over by Sunnyside, where people are buried without benefit of chemicals of any kind. They're wrapped in flax like this. And the idea is that the body disintegrates naturally, usually within about 5 years. And so there's nothing left at all. No casket to protect it. Don't want that kind of nonsense. If they use anything at all, they use cardboard boxes made of recyclable paper. And the body can be decorated. Here they're putting flowers on it. Marigolds are the favorite flower of celebration in Southeast Asia for both Muslims and Hindus. And they make what we would think of as leis. Marigolds, they're very important. Here the marigolds are being heaped up on this person's body. The body will be carried down to the Ghats, where a large pyre of sandalwood is awaiting. The body will be placed on the sandalwood, and then the oldest son is given a torch, a flaming torch, dipped in kerosene or tar or something, and ignites the thing. And then the whole thing eventually goes up in flames because the family is there and stand around chanting Hindu scripture perhaps, talking about the loved one. And you would never get this in American crematorium, I can tell you. What they are waiting for, you got to hold on to your hats, literally, for this one, is a loud pop. The steam, the liquid within the skull turns to steam and starts building pressure in the skull. And at some point, the skull breaks with a loud pop. That pop announces that the soul of the individual has now left and is on this leg to the afterlife, which is exactly where you want to go. Everybody's happy. They kind of cheer. Can you imagine that going on in this country? And they kind of, they're glad that this has happened. And then when the flame, when everything burns down, then what's left, the bones, whatever, it's all pushed into the Ganges and goes on down the river. As you probably know, there are large South Asian populations in the UK. A number of years ago, a Hindu community approached the proper authorities in London and said, we don't want to use your gas-fired crematorium. We would like to have sandalwood pyres on the banks of the Thames. Would you allow that? No. We're not going to have that kind of thing here. South Asians are very outgoing and sometimes very persistent. So they went to the city council in Edinburgh, and I don't remember the name of the river that runs through there. It basically said, those SOBs in London won't let us do this on the Thames. How about you guys? And the Scots, knowing what it's like to be pushed around by the English, said, sure, why not? So they set up a designated area for them to do that. They wanted to have somebody who was employed by a government licensed crematorium to be there to supervise what's going on. They had to get a certificate to allow this to happen. And they were permitted a limited number of them per year. So they're allowed to do that. But what a nice way to accommodate other people's customs. So these are examples of how this enchantment kind of thing goes on. So you can take really any one of these kinds of pieces on the leg here, and you can find enchantments of various kind working in different cultures of various kind. And you can find interesting similarities, but also interesting differences right across culture. But I think Herod's had it right. Death practices in all societies adhere to a certain system. There's an underlying structure. It's not just quaint and curious customs that people have, including ourselves. And so we're plenty enchanted in our own minds, as anybody else in this world. Well, I'll stop on that point, and any questions, comments, examples of your own experience of this kind of thing going on? Yeah.
What about widow burning in India?
Yes. Yes, that was, let's see, there's a name for that. That was outlawed by the British at the days of the Raj. That's probably the only good thing they did in India, when India was the jewel in the crown, as Queen Victoria called it, because they just extracted the hell out of India. It's pretty ugly what they did. The name will come to me. The custom was that if the husband died first, which he usually did, then it was the wife's duty to be burned on the pyre with him, even if she's still alive. And usually what she would do to show her own ritual purity is go through the same self-starvation and hydration that her deceased husband was going through. So that by the time they got to the pyre, if she wasn't dead, she was so delirious, or maybe in a coma, who knows. I mean, it's frightful to think about. It's pretty ugly. But the Brits said absolutely not. Their argument was it offends good Christian sensibility. Well, if you're a Hindu, you don't give a damn about Christian sensibility, but the Brits had the power. And so they put a stop to that kind of nonsense. And it is, I mean, it is revolting to think about that going on. I mean, to me it is at least. But they did stop that. And they probably figured out some kind of ritual observance that the wife could do since she can't sacrifice herself. I don't know what that would have been, but you're right. That was a practice at one time, but it was stopped. Muslims, by the way, who were the people I worked with mostly, and that was in Pakistan, they know about these Hindu practices, and they just shake their heads. Just, how could they do such awful stuff? Because Muslim practices are really very simple. They're like Jewish practices in lots of ways. They're not ornate, they don't have fancy coffins, they just wrap the body in plain cloth, they clean the body. There's some very simple ceremonies that go with it. And there are some, it's interesting, and then the body's put in the ground. And many cemeteries that I saw in Pakistan aren't even marked. I remember with my students once there, they were going past and everybody was, that's a cemetery, because there was one marker. I said, gee, just one person buried. Oh no, a lot of them were buried there, on this side of the fence, he said. Well, how do you know it's a cemetery? Well, because that one marker's there, that was for a Sufi saint. So, I mean, it's a charisma thing. So everybody wants to be around, but nobody's